All right. Stretch it out. Take a deep breath. Me, 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 me. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Okay, and we're serious now. Very serious.
Are we?
Oh, gosh. All right. On with the show. All right. Hello, scorekeepers. From the land of the Dakotas, also known as the Twin Cities, it's The Score, episode 7. Can you believe it?
No, I can't.
Lucky number 7.
I mean, that's just insane. My gosh. Anyway, welcome to the show. This is Minnesota Opera's podcast, where we talk about classical music and opera from a Black perspective. I am Rocky Jones. I am here with my two amazing co-hosts, Paige Reynolds and Lee Bynum. How are y'all doing?
We're chilling. Pretty good.
Yeah, living life.
Well, that sounds like a ringing endorsement of life and love and existence.
It is a gloomy day, to be fair.
It's a very gloomy day.
It's so dreary.
It has been raining nonstop.
Just cats and dogs. And I know you two just had like your check-in. I had a check-in with my therapist this morning.
Amen.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, absolutely amen. And as the son of a psychology major from Howard University, I take my mental health very seriously and very, loud and proud. I am in therapy. Everyone go get some. It's good for you. But it was one of those sessions where it's like we got like real into it. And like my therapist is great and he has very clear boundaries. Like when the session is over, the session is over. And so we got to like the end time and like he just looked at me and he was just like, I don't have anything at 11. Do you have a few more minutes? And I was just like, oh, gosh. But no, it was good. It was very helpful.
It was that kind of day, though. He was like, we could use that kind of extra few.
Are you okay? You okay? But, I think it's also been like that kind of a week.
Yeah, for sure.
I think all of us, we are recording this on Thursday the 27th. So 2 days ago on Tuesday the 25th was the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd outside of Cup Foods on 38th in Chicago, here in Minneapolis. And it was definitely a complicated day for me.
Yeah.
And I think a complicated day for people all over this country, but especially here in this city where there is just so much turmoil sort of in the aftermath of that event. It really was an event that, quite literally shook the world.
Yeah.
The epicenter was right here. Where we live. And so I'm just, I'm curious, how are y'all doing? Did either of you do anything special on that day to sort of commemorate the moment?
I did. I was in my feelings that day. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take some time to prioritize my mental health and community and just kind of knowing that if I just sat and wallowed, I would probably, I didn't want to like send my nervous system back into that place of last year and not only the the murder of George Floyd, but then the uprisings afterwards, it was just a really heightened time. So I was like, let's do some emotional regulation, some nervous system regulation today. Let's just anticipate that. So, I took it easy, and I reflected, and especially, reflected on the people I was with at that time last year, and just, my community, and feeling really grateful for the folks I could lean on. And then I spent some time in George Floyd Memorial Square. And I think that was the best thing I could have done. It felt really good to be in community. I mean, it was like, I don't know. I feel there's a lot of, it's not just like one emotion or one feeling. So like, yeah, there was a somewhat of a solemn mood, a thoughtful and reflective mood, but also a lot of love, and also just like, look at how we continue to come together, kind of mood as well. And that I think George Floyd Square has been occupied 24/7 since then. It has not reopened. Yeah, like the big fist that y'all see in the pictures and stuff, that's all still there. A lot of the stuff that people laid down last year as as flowers, or just dedications to the space, that's all still there. So yeah, that was beautiful. And I was out there with Million Artists Movement. We do our power tree quilting, and we had all the quilts out that we made last summer at the square. Well, not all of them. It was actually a whole lot of quilts. we couldn't put them all up, but so many people came to our booth to make even more quilt squares.
So cool.
Yeah,
good.
But it's a beautiful thing, and people comment walking away like, "Oh, I feel so much more calm." Some person said like, "Oh, this is the calmest like I felt in months." So there was just like a really like a lot of thoughtful, healing, creative kind of engagement, music everywhere. All the food was free. There's health information there, like all kinds of stuff. So it was beautiful. It was just what my heart needed.
Good.
That sounds like a beautiful experience.
Yeah. What about you, Rocky?
Oh, well, I did a little bit more wallowing than Paige did. I think for me, I just kind of took that day to really sort of sit and do some quiet reflecting, which, I don't really take the time to do as much as perhaps that I should. And to do a lot of sort of emotional processing, as, Mr. Aquarius, I think you'd probably understand this, that, when it comes to sort of emotional stuff, I tend to sort of try and understand it, rather than like actually like feel it. And so I wanted to take that day to really just sort of do some processing, see what comes up, maybe write, maybe create some music. And I found that, thinking about this past year, just like you said, Paige, like there was just, at the time, like everything was so heightened and everyone's nervous systems were just, on 10, like for months. And through that, so many things happened, so many changes happened, personally, professionally, in the world. I think, we probably would still, have our diversity charter at Minnesota Opera, and we probably, would be, maybe we'd be sitting here, in our jobs doing this podcast. I don't think all of those things perhaps would have happened as quickly, or with as much urgency. And so I feel happy that we have this opportunity, this space to really express ourselves, to do good work, to be out there in the community and making change. But one thing that I really found that perhaps I wasn't quite expecting is how close I really got to my anger on Tuesday. I found Tuesday to be a very, very angry day for me. Simply because, yes, we're having all of these conversations, and there have been changes that have been made, but it doesn't feel like the changes have gone far enough, fast enough. I read an article in Forbes that, corporate America had pledged $50 billion in the wake of all of the uprisings. And less than 1% of that had been actually donated and allocated in the year since. That there have been polls of white Americans, and support for Black Lives Matter is even less than it was before George Floyd's murder at this point. And it sort of reminds me, it fills me with just kind of, I try to stay optimistic as much as I can. But, to read things like that is really, really hard. And it makes me feel a degree of worry, just sort of, was all of this talk of EDI and anti-racism and everything that sprung up in the wake of Mr. Floyd's murder, the call for abolition and defunding the police and, just dismantling this entire, sort of white supremacist system and all these institutions that have been on our necks for 400 years. Was that just kind of a fad? And now people are, at least the people who are, we're really looking to sort of change laws and change hearts and minds. I don't know. I watched the news and I watched all of these people, a lot of white people being interviewed, being like, oh my gosh, now we're just having these conversations and the conversation has changed and I've learned so much. And it's like, well, if the conversation has changed so much and you've learned so much, why doesn't it feel like anything is all that different?
Yeah. Why is it still just a conversation?
Why is it still just a conversation? Why isn't it action? Why haven't we, gotten together to make some sort of collective change? And so for me, I think, we tend to forget that, this isn't the first time. Obviously that, a Black person has been, executed publicly by a police officer. I think sometimes people tend to forget that, Philando Castile's murder was broadcast on Facebook Live.
Yep.
Everybody got to watch that as well. And taking it back to, Rodney King, in the 90s. And, we all watched him just get savagely beaten by, 5 police officers. So this isn't the first time that this sort of thing has happened. I think it's the first time that it happened at a time when literally everyone in the country was forced to be in their homes and forced to watch. You couldn't get away from it. And so it caused this, national reckoning, and thank God for Daniela, or Darnella, excuse me, for taking that video and being there. but it just makes me feel like if we can't take this, if we can't all see that and take that from that action and move it from a space of conversation to a space of action, and don't do it quickly, then like I don't want to be like this super pessimistic person, but I don't know how we move forward, how we actually advance, and and it makes me angry. It makes me really, 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 really effing angry, because, you know, for 400 years in this country, every generation of black people who have lived in this country has asked every generation of white people in this country to please remove your boot from my neck. And they all always go, oh, sure, 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 sure. Like, you know, Emancipation Proclamation, Voting Rights Act, Barack Obama, cool. But all that's really actually happened is that, like, the style of the boot has changed. Like, at first it was, like, you know, like a little, like, pilgrim boot with a buckle, and now it's, like, some, like, hipstery vintage brown leather
Right. There's some fancy work
type
boot.
deal. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a long-winded answer to your question, Lee. I'm feeling a bit better today now that I'm seeing both of you and talking to both of you. But yeah, it was a struggle that day.
Yeah.
But how are you doing, Lee?
You know, yeah, it's been a hard one, because this week I was sick most of the week. I'm feeling mostly better, but not 100%. And as luck would have it, my husband is away for the next couple of weeks. He's doing a gig that has him back on the East Coast, and it's exciting because, you know, it's been like really 15 months since any performers have been doing anything live and in person. So I'm super excited for him in that regard. But boy, what a week to be left alone with my own thoughts. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I am of two minds, and neither of them is in a great place about any of this. There's the one piece where, you know, when I can see things with clarity, I know that there has been movement in the sense that we're actively having conversations about police reform, even if they're not going anywhere in a lot of instances, that there is a space to have these kinds of conversations is not a throwaway thing for me. And I appreciate that there is more openness now to actually thinking about the many valences of how communities of color are experiencing being policed. And the fact that we are now talking about them in the public square, I think, is really important. On the other hand, I would challenge someone to tell me what's actually different now than what we had last year, right? And, you know, part of why this is a thing that I can't just intellectualize my way out of, like I managed to do for so many things, simply to be a queer Black person alive in America. I feel like there are moments that I just have to take something and put it to the side, right? Because if you spend a lot of time thinking about some of this stuff, what it does to your psyche, it isn't terribly useful, right? But part of why this is such a challenge for me, and I've shared this with the two of you before, but I haven't, you know, really talked about it with people who I don't know well, is when I was a kid, literally like in first grade, there was a racial violence incident, against a group of West Indian immigrants in Howard Beach, New York. And one of them was my uncle. And this was such a thing that framed my understanding of the world, right? And it wasn't the same thing because it was with, you know, a bunch of teenagers and not police, but it was the same kind of like national moment, right? Where, you know, my uncle was like on the Phil Donahue show, which was, I guess, the Chris Cuomo show of its time. And, you know,
Oh, no, not Chris Cuomo.
I love Chris Cuomo. I shouldn't compare him to Donahue, perhaps. And, you know, they actually made a TV movie of it where the great Joe Morton played my uncle.
What? Oh, I love Joe Morton.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I love Joe Morton as well. If you're listening, Joe, please join us here on The Score. But, you know, like so much of my worldview was shaped by that, right? And, you know, it's a thing that I feel like recurs every couple of years and now every couple of months. When one of these things happens, like I immediately think about everything else in addition to the incident. You know, like, how does this mark a person's life? You know, I've two cousins, you know, they were this person, his name was Cedric Sandiford, he's no longer alive. My two cousins, you know, are his sons, and, you know, they're very grown men now, several years older than I am. But this was a thing that marked their lives. This was a thing that shaped him, right? And I don't know what to do with a lot of these moments, because you have so many people saying, you know, oh, this was a thing that happened and it changed us and we've moved as a society and we're now all in a different place. And I do feel like the murder of Mr. Floyd was such an inflection point for our whole generation, for all of America. But then you also turn around a year later and, like, you wonder what has shifted. And, you know, I wonder for his family, like, are y'all okay? You know, are you ever going to be okay? Are you ever going to stop thinking about this? So there are just so many pieces for me, right? And as we look out to Juneteenth, as we are, you know, practically on the eve of, you know, this incredible anniversary for the Tulsa Race Massacre, like, I just think about the country in which we live and how far we haven't come in so many ways. You know, at the same time that we want to lift up, you know, we have a Black woman vice president, right? And all of the wonderful things that we've seen changing. And then at the same time, you know, I don't know. And, you know, this damn PhD in history, which is such a reminder of the cycles of racialized violence in this country, you know, you can set your watch by it. And, you know, I think for me, part of why the anxiety isn't dissipating at all is because I know there's always another shoe to drop. And I know that we will have this moment and some of us will feel like we have been made to different people because of the moment. And then others of us are just going to feel like, you know, we are stuck in the same kind of morass of you know, anti-Blackness. And that anti-Blackness just is so present in so many places. So yeah, it's been a hell of a week, you know, and I wish I could dress this up to be something else or put a spin on it that's positive, or say, you know, but we have X and Y and Z to look forward to. But I'm not feeling that today, and I can't, you know, I can't sort of manufacture that in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just under the surface of, like, the beauty that I saw on Tuesday is all the feelings that y'all just described also. I totally hear you. And it's like, I think part of the anger is like that, like, tell me what has tangibly changed. Not a whole lot, not systemically. And just like, I was really hoping we wouldn't get to a 1 year anniversary and that I wouldn't look around and be like, where'd all the quote unquote allies go? Where everybody at? But here I am a year later wondering, where's everybody at? That's a big part of the anger and frustration. It's like one of those times where you're saying, I told you so, and you really didn't want to have to say I told you so. Like, I didn't want to have to say it, but I knew I'd be saying it. And I think, like, it's also, it can be frustrating to see people falling into the same traps of talking in circles or talking about symbolic change or only representational politics and like not actual change in policy or law or structures, and people getting fooled by like the same thing. My personal frustrations with, you know, our mayor and all of that, and we can edit this out later if we need to. But I just want to know if y'all heard about this news story about the mayor and the police chief and how they coordinated with the PR firm to basically sway city council members to protect MPD's budget. They basically...
Wait, what?
Yes. It is in the Minnesota Reformer, and Minneapolis Police Chief Arredondo coordinated closely with a group called Operation Safety Now. They're like a pro-police group created by a PR consultant to sway public opinion and the city council against budget cuts to MPD. And the office of the mayor was in on it as well. And there's email proof. Because the defunding MPD, I guess, was getting too popular for them. Yeah. It is in a public, reputable news source.
Oh
yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I keep trying to... Levi always makes fun of me. One of our consultants that we work with always makes fun of me because I'm always just like, I don't know why anyone's surprised by any of this stuff. Like, and I need to work on like not being surprised by these things anymore because they're not surprising. And yet somehow I still find myself sitting here going, what? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I frequently say to people, if you are surprised right now, it's because you haven't been paying attention. And I really thought I was paying attention. And even hearing something like this to me, it's one of those things that I'm like, of all of the potential responses that you could have had to this situation, why on earth was that the one that made the sense to you? Like, I'm asking for a friend because like there's a part of me that is just so curious to know what the sequence of words were that made that into, yes, that is the good idea. Like, I am legitimately curious.
You know, and I think it goes back to something we talked about on a previous episode where it's just, you know, for so many people, you know, when we talk about, you know, racism and anti-racism, for them it's about sort of like doing some deep introspection and, you know, sort of changing their personal feelings and how they're personally, you know, relating to, you know, people of color and, you know, eliminating, you know, their implicit biases and unlearning and decolonizing and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, no, this is what we're talking about. This sort of institutional BS that is being perpetrated at sort of high levels of government in order and done, you know, under the cover of, you know, in the darkness. This is what we're talking about. Yeah. This is the type of action that I'm talking about. Yeah. Like changing that sort of stuff. Changing whatever is in the air that makes people think that that's normal and that's okay. That after like an entire year of people being out in the streets, marching, shouting, after this trial, all of that, mind effery.
Yeah.
Like, after all of that, this is what we're dealing with. Still.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have these people who are being elected into these positions and who are then appointing people into positions of power in order to do that.
Yeah.
And who does that serve?
Yeah.
It's not serving me. It's not serving my community.
No.
It's not serving my state or my country. Who is it serving? And if it doesn't seem like it's serving you, like, maybe let's stop, giving these weird wealthy sociopaths positions of power. Maybe let's stop doing that.
Just an idea.
Maybe that's a thing we could do moving forward. But
a thing that Damien and I talk about when we watch RuPaul is this idea of, where are your friends? Do you know what I mean? And I'll tell you where I specifically mean. Sometimes on RuPaul's Drag Race, somebody will come out in an outfit and you're like, oh, sweetheart, where are your friends? Who are the people in your life who are supposed to say to you, you look a fool right now? Because we all need those people, right? If you are a politician, you need those people so much more. You need to have surrounded yourself with a group of people who are not going to support and suborn your doing crazy, inappropriate, ugly things. Matt Gaetz, I'm talking to you. You need people around you who are going to say to you, wait a minute, this is not good. You represent other people. Your job is to show up for other people in a certain kind of way. You cannot just operate off of this idea, well, this seems like it's going to benefit me, so I'm just going to run with it, right? Everybody needs those people to help guide them and to help them to be able to reflect back to you the broader dynamics of your choices and how things are going to play out down the road. And even if this is something that's very selfish, where is the person to say to the mayor, wow, if this gets out, you will never work in politics again? Even that, even if that is a thing to keep you on the rails, what is that for some of these people? And how do we as voters get better about asking those kinds of questions about the sort of decision-making matrices that people make for themselves? Because this isn't a unique thing whatsoever. I feel like this, article you shared, Paige, we could pick a municipality in the United States and find that kind of thing happening almost anywhere, even with, the most progressive voices that we have in the country. And it's just it's a thing that I just find so exasperating. I feel like we have some deeply rooted issues in this country around not wanting to let go of a set of ideologies that are clearly serving none of us anymore. And the fact that people run back to, the Constitution says this, that, and the third. Most of these people couldn't spell Constitution, let alone having read it, right? They're talking about a bunch of stuff that were written on the fly, a series of compromises that were executed in a particular moment where many of those people who wrote it were writing under duress, right? And now we are trying to use aspects of that to hold us into acting in a certain way now, hundreds of years later. It doesn't even make any sense, right? And I don't understand why more people aren't pushing this idea of, where are we right now? What are our needs right now? How do we make some radical shifts around that? Many of us don't have that much to lose anyway, right? So being able to have some of these
millennials and Gen Z, stand up.
We sitting here I have 6 figures in debt. Come at me.
My God,
I got
right?
nothing to lose.
I got $27 and a bag of hot Cheetos. You want that?
Right, you want the apartment I'm sharing with 11 other roommates because I can't, because rent is so high. What do you want?
It just, I mean, I try not to be somebody who's just throwing his hands up in the air, right? And just being like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I really try to be focused on, let me identify what in my small sphere I can control and affect the change that I believe in there. But I do have these moments of just having more questions than answers. And I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions this week. I don't have a lot of answers. And I feel like the tiredness of the ancestors. You know, I just feel like the fact that any of our great-grandparents, like literally our great-grandparents, 3 of them could have been sitting in a room and having this exact same conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
You know, I don't even know what to say. I really don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there is anything else to say. Until something changes, I don't know. It feels like, you know, people say this over and over again, but because it's true, broken record. Like, just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's 1 p.m. and I already feel like I need some brandy, but not not liquor. I'm talking brandy Norwood. I feel like this is like,
Yes.
I'm gonna need some 90s music to pull me out of this.
Well, I think that is actually, you know, a kind of a theme for this conversation, and maybe we can just put it out there into the universe, put it out there to perhaps some of the folks that came out last summer and they were allies and they were not there with you in George Floyd Square on Tuesday. Y'all, almost doesn't count.
Yeah.
Almost does not count.
Listen to it again. Run it back if you need to. Run this whole thing back if you need to.
Well,
Yes.
let's cleanse our spirits because we have guests. We have company coming.
Woo! Yay!
Yes, it's very exciting. We have a very, 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 very special guest. 2 very special guests coming
Yes,
up.
we do.
So stay tuned, and we will be right back.
We are very excited to have 2 wonderful guests with us today. And I'll say just a little bit more about them shortly. The Harlem Chamber Players, a New York-based orchestra founded and run by Liz Player, is a wonderful ensemble whose work I am very proud to support. This season, they are producing Pity These Ashes, Tulsa 1921 to 2021, to commemorate both the Tulsa Race Massacre and Juneteenth on Saturday, June 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. The concert will feature music by some of our favorite composers, including Jesse Montgomery, Alice Coltrane, Trevor Weston, and a world premiere by today's very, very special guests, Adolphus Hailstork and Herbert Martin, which will be performed by mezzo-soprano Janae Bridges. Thank you so much, Dr. Hailstork and Dr. Martin, for joining us. The music of composer Adolphus Hailstork has been played by major orchestras across the globe, including in New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Detroit, and his operas have been produced by the Opera Theater of St. Louis, Chicago, Cincinnati, Kansas City Lyric, and others. He has degrees from Manhattan School of Music and Michigan State University with additional training from the American Conservatory at Fontainebleau and Howard University, which we believe is the greatest place on earth. He is currently working on his 4th symphony and A Knee on a Neck, a tribute to George Floyd. Herbert Martin is Professor Emeritus in English at the University of Dayton, where he has been on the faculty since 1970. Educated at SUNY Buffalo, Middlebury College, and Carnegie Mellon, Dr. Martin is a noted scholar of African-American writer Paul Laurence Dunbar and a prolific poet and librettist as well. I believe he's published 8 books of poetry and 5 monographs or edited volumes based on his research. He's written libretti for the opera The Last Tsar with Philip Magnuson and a cantata about Crispus Attucks, who of course was the first American killed in the American Revolution, with our other guest today, Adolphus Hailstork. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Welcome.
So for those in our audience who may be less familiar with your work than we are, just to get us started, I wanted to ask, how, if at all, has your identity as Black American shaped your journeys in classical music and poetry?
Well, I think in terms of being Black or African American, which has allowed me to feed into racial and ethnic identity, which has been mine all along by birth. Perhaps this is a given, and it's given me, I would say, an edge in terms of writing suitable texts. Whatever the case may be, I think I've responded, as best as I could. And saying this, I realize this unlocks the term for me. On the one hand, it puts me in a kind of bind or a box, but on the other hand, it frees me to do many things that I had not given thought to. So I don't think it's a hinder or a hamper to me at all.
Well, my own response to that is I jump from box to box. I consider myself a cultural hybrid or multicultural, actually, and that some pieces I write reflect African American heritage. Some pieces don't. When I'm presented with a text, some of the spectacular texts of Herbert Martin, then I want to work with that and try to reflect the qualities, the pathos that he brings to it, the passion he brings to it. And there are other texts I use or that I've been involved with that don't reflect our heritage. And so I don't feel obligated at all times to make sure that the music reflects Black idioms. But that's it. The first thing a person is an individual. And then you want to start putting labels on what kind of individual he is and what kind of work he does. Then in my case anyway, that gets very complex, and everybody admits that I'm multi-stylistic, and I proudly accept the label.
Thank you for those. Those are really fantastic thoughts.
Well, one thing I'm very curious about, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. And so just thinking about, that moment that you fell in love with classical music, that you fell in love with poetry, what was that moment? And, at the beginning of your career, did you have any mentors, especially Black mentors that you looked up to? And if so, what were some of the things that you admired about them and just some of the things that you love about what you do?
I grew up in northern New York State, or mid New York State, Albany, New York. There were no Black mentors. I had no Black mentors. I did not go to a Black church. I came up in a white Episcopal cathedral, very high church Episcopal cathedral. And my first, immersion into Black culture, Black history, etc., was when I went to Howard University as an undergrad. And that was absolutely a new experience because I didn't go to a Black high school. In other words, the so-called Black experience, which has really been identified as the Southern Black experience. It was something that I was not exposed to until I got to Howard. And before that, how I got into music, I never knew when I wasn't in music. I started in music with a aptitude test when I hit the 3rd grade. Yeah, they put a violin in my hand, and the rest is history. I played in the public school orchestras. I sang in the cathedral choir, a boys and men's choir, a la England, a whole 9 yards. So my whole experience has been shaped very strongly by my early upbringing in classical literature. I heard jazz, I heard R&B, I heard all those other things, but the fundamental impact of the work in which I was most involved was of the Euro tradition.
I think I began at the opposite end of the spectrum because I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and so we quite naturally went to the Baptist church and heard all of the songs, all of the old hymns of the church, which were always sung a cappella before the prayers in the church. And so I was literally born into that tradition, I suppose. And so, in fact, I learned dialect from 1 to 12. And then we moved north to Ohio, and all of that disappeared. And so I had to learn standard English and forget about it.
That's all I ever knew.
So now I have both. I moved back and forth. And one of the things that I learned early on is Dunbar was in the textbook in Alabama because the literati of those days were black for the black schools and white for the white schools. When I moved north, that all changed again. And so the people who edited the text for the schools quite naturally left Dunbar out because they were white and didn't know anything about him. So he disappeared for 4 years. Then when I went to college, I was a sophomore, and lo and behold, the book opened and there were black authors. And in those days, you didn't question the professor. I yelled out, "There are black people in this book." I think the class and I were sort of astounded by that. But none of them knew that I hadn't seen any black writers for the last 4 years of high school. They just weren't there, and so I had to reintroduce myself to them, in college. And from that point on, I think they were almost always there. And I searched out people that I knew were close by, and I would unabashedly knock on their door and gain entrance to their houses. So I think the word must have gotten around that there's this crazy little kid who will show up at any time uninvited, and you have to invite him in. And most of them did. So that's how I connected with most of the black authors around the country.
Thank you so much.
You mentioned like some of your educational, spaces were like, or the spaces where you were really, developing in music and in poetry. And there's been a lot of change since then, but there's especially been a lot of change just in this past year or two alone. And so I kind of want to fast forward now and ask you both, what's been unique about the past year for both of you? Have there been unique opportunities or challenges for both yourself or that you observe for for Black artists, for artists of color in general?
Well, let me say that I feel like I have been knocking on the back door of the Academy for the longest time. And sometimes I think they haven't really quite answered, but don't worry about that. I keep writing anyway. And the voices I explore are both Black and white. And I think that that's because I find everybody that I approach has to be human. And then from that point on, it may very well be that somebody asks me to write a text that has to do with a Black subject matter, and that's okay too. And I'm fine about that. So I just barrel ahead. But the community has changed, and a great many Black writers, some now deceased, have made it into the Academy and made it into, I think, the anthologies. That for the writer is immortality, I think, because as long as the anthology's out there, they get taught. That's been my experience, and I've been happy to send blindly to a journal who accepts something, and that amazes me because I wonder why they took it. But beyond that, you have to go with acceptances.
Well, my own experience is that there's been an opening up. Now, this is cyclical, though, and some of my colleagues are skeptical about its continuance. When back in the 80s, when the Congress was debating whether they were going to have a Martin Luther King holiday, I realized that there was an opportunity there for Black composers, because librarians all of a sudden from different orchestras were scrambling all over the place for music by Black composers, so they can say, oh yeah, we got a Black composer on this thing that's Martin Luther King. And I said, well, let me get myself ready. And then I wrote a piece called Epitaph for a Man Who Dreamed, and other pieces addressing the situation. And the holiday came into being, and also there was also Black History Month. And I said, okay, now that they're awakened, let's see if this continues. It did not continue. The enthusiasm did not continue, but I did get frequent performances. Then that faded away for 20 years or so. Occasionally concern, just looking at the music for its quality, which is okay with me too, because I'll put it against a lot of composers. And then now you're talking about, it took the death of Martin Luther King, because that's how I got in grad school, by the way. I mean, not in grad school, but working on my doctorate. I was in the Army, and they, all of a sudden, as soon as he was killed, money started popping out of the walls at universities, and they were throwing it at Black scholars. And it's saying, would you please come to our school? Okay. And then this is now with the death of George Floyd. We've got all of this interest in music of Black composers, and young people, especially young composers, I'm very happy for them, are seizing the opportunity and coming forth with all kinds of literature, most of it, or much of it anyway, protest literature, or socially oriented literature, which is exactly what many orchestras and ensembles want. Another thing that's influencing the orchestras and operas and etc. is the fact that they want to increase their audience. There's a big discussion going on right now about how do you get Blacks in the orchestra? How do you get Blacks in the audience? How do you get Blacks on stage in opera, et cetera, et cetera. This is going on. It's become very active since the death of George Floyd. And people are beginning to line up for Dr. Martin's Requiem piece that he wrote, and I'm working with him on that. It discusses in a way the problems of being an African American in this country. He starts out with a Black mother's warning, commandment to her child, especially her son, to watch out when you go outside, because if a policeman may stop you at any time just because your skin is dark. And so it's a powerful statement, but powerful statements are done all over the place. We know that Tulsa, the story of Tulsa, was not even discovered or revealed in a large way until the 1990s. And now composers all over the place are jumping on it as a theme. And I got a very powerful text from Herb on that subject, and I enjoyed writing it. But overall, there's a foment, you might say, of going on concerning the interest in Black composers. I'm very glad to see that happening, especially for the young people. And hope it continues this time. Hope all this talk about, well, what can we do, continues beyond a mere 10 years or something like that. And then will it just die out, or can it now become part of the American canon? Yeah. It can't be always Copeland and Bernstein and Roy Harris and George Gershwin as representing Black, of course. So let's see the great opening up maybe going on. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that, thinking back to the Black Commandment and the cantata that's coming up, my mother I was the kid who could get to town and pay the bills when we were in Alabama. But I was always told that this is what I had to do. Right. Keep the money pinned to my underwear until I went into the house or into the store. And then when I got to the lady at the counter, I could take the money out of my underwear and pay her. And then I was to make sure that I got the receipt from her that I had given her our money. And then I could take the bus back home. And always, I had to be aware of, I was going downtown. I was about to go into where everybody was in the city. And I was to be on my best behavior, because my mother always said, if you get arrested, there's no telling what I am going to find out when, one, I get the news, two, I get a lawyer, and three, when I get to the jailhouse. And so she said, mind your P's and Q's. And so always I had that in the back of my mind. It wasn't any kind of conversation. She just said, these are the laws, these are the rules, follow them, and you'll come home. And so I did. And that's sort of been ingrained. It was ingrained in me. And in those days, you didn't say, well, why do I have to do that way? No kid ever talk back to the parents, no matter what. Why are you going this road? Because I want to. Ow.
Yeah.
That would be the answer to that. So.
And you have that story right here in your text, and how to behave if you are approached by a policeman, and and you also have the story of your mother worrying about if she had to come down to the jailhouse, which she would find. Well, George Floyd didn't even make it to a jailhouse. So I didn't know how personal this was for you.
Well, I didn't either until you said that.
This is wonderful to know this, and boy, I hope you like the piece. I worked hard on this sucker. This is a 28 minutes long, big orchestra, big choir, 3 soloists. Okay, we'll see what happens with the team of Martin and Hailstork. Okay.
Well, part of my upbringing when I went north, I got a music teacher, and so when I get these orders from you saying, "Give me a text for this or that or the other," I try to figure out what the musical line is going to be, and whether those words will fit into the context of that person's personality or his voice range or her voice range or those kinds of things. So I'm always aware of whether or not a word is singable or not. That's important to me. So and I try to say to you many times, if it doesn't quite agree to you, change it, because there's no reason to fight over pronouns and consonants and whatever else.
I especially like what you did with the Tulsa. You personalized it with this woman who's watching her mother die.
Yes.
Oh, and then she is in the whole rest of the piece is kind of like a lament, a storytelling lament that is, of course, colored by that scene of watching what her mother said to her just before she died.
Yeah.
And that made it so powerful. This is a fortuitous bonding. We're going to be going down in history, young man.
Well, I don't know.
Martin and Hailstork and Martin, Martin and Hailstork, yeah.
Well, most of that text comes from my imagination, because the Tulsa people who had the power completely eradicated everything that went on. They literally assassinated that whole section of town and burned it down, and then they kept the media away. And would not let any information. So I was up against the real wall when I first began. I thought, how do I write the text for this when the information has been hidden from us for so many years?
Right.
So that was indeed terrifying to me, because I had to imagine what was going on.
That is really, really powerful. And I know that our listeners are going to be so interested in hearing about your process, right? I think that's something that many of us are not privy to, how pieces like this are shaped and created. And I know, especially for those of us in the Twin Cities, that A Knee on a Neck will be a really important and emotional piece for us to reflect on everything that's happened here. So I'm so grateful to have heard a little bit about how that came together. We only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to just ask in closing, since you've brought up a few things around how classical music has changed over the years, and some of what you've both have talked about with getting Black people more closely into these spaces, is a key part of what Paige and Rocky and I do every day at Minnesota Opera. So in closing, I'm curious if there's anything that you might want to say about what changes you hope to see either in opera, classical music, poetry, what have you, especially relative to communities of color in the next few years.
Well, more of the younger generation especially are integrating, let's say, urban sounds into their writing. I didn't come up in that way, although I have used jazz and I have used blues, and I definitely have used and love the spirituals, which you might say is not the urban writing, but it is reflective of the history of our people. And I think that this is a good thing, as long as it stays a broad thing. I've noticed that some entrepreneurs trying to put together a concert or conductors are requesting or looking for music which reflects only the urban experience and the finger popping and the hip twitching approach, or the entertainment approach to African music. And one thing I like to tell people is that Black people are a lot deeper than just their entertainment value.
Yeah.
And that Gershwin is not the foundation of what it means to have an African-American experience, or certainly an African-American musical experience. And there are other approaches much more serious that come out of the deep non-jumping around Black church. This is, so I think it's the beginning, especially if more Black musicologists come along, and even Black critics who can reflect, who have the history and know the history of the background, our people, can reflect on this music. And it's not just slotted into, the Nicholas Brothers tap dancing or something like that. Oh, and we're different and not exclusively jazz, hip hop, rap, right, etc. So that is what I think. It's a path, whether it goes that way or not. Again, the problem is, if there's a problem, and there's that the means of production are in the hands of people who know nothing about, or care nothing about, or very little about what it means to be African American in this country. And so they have a mindset of what Black music should be. And that could be a box they're creating that we have to be very careful about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I found, just briefly, becoming a narrator for symphony orchestras around the country has been a kind of godsend. And that is to say that I have been able to narrate Copland as well as William Grant Still. And in that sense, I am hoping that what I'm doing is giving the Black audiences in those towns an opportunity to first of all see a Black person come out and handle the language like any other actor who is on the podium. And so in that way, I'm hoping that they say, well, if he did it, I can do it too. And I can manage that language, or I can become a narrator for this particular work. So all of those opportunities are still there. Black actors and actresses just have to be given the opportunity to show that they can do this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredibly powerful. Wow, thank you. Thank you both for this. This has been such an honor and a pleasure this morning. Let's give them a quick round of applause. I know it's
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And once again, the Harlem Chamber Players Pity These Ashes, Tulsa 1921 to 2021, premieres online on Saturday, June 19th, 7 p.m. Eastern. Also performing on the program are noted violinists Lady Jess, Jessica McJunkins, and harpist Ashley Jackson. In support of the concert, The Dream Unfinished, the New York-based activist orchestra, is sponsoring the panel Remembrance and Restitution, where Professors Jasmine Young, Ashley Lawrence Sanders, Ashley Jackson, and I will discuss the role Black artists play in maintaining historical memory. This panel airs on Facebook Live on June 10th, and will include information about both events in this week's program notes. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll be right back after a brief break.
Welcome back to The Score, everybody. It is time for our PB&J, pure Black joy, delicious.
Yum, yum, yum.
I've always wanted to do the peanut butter jelly time song. I feel like we're right here. It's peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. I'm delighted to kick things off today with another little update from my illustrious alma mater, Howard University, that just announced it is officially decided to name the newly reinstated College of Fine Arts the Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts.
Yay, yay.
Yay!
Yes, rest in peace, King.
Rest in peace, rest in power, Chadwick. And this just means a lot on multiple levels, because, deserving. So deserving. Amazing career, by all accounts, a wonderful human being. I've heard everybody from not just celebrities, but regular folk who met him who just said that he was just a beacon of light, walking the earth. So deserving. And that he was a big part of the College of Fine Arts actually being reinstated. So he spoke at Howard University commencement a couple years ago. And while he was there, I don't know if he made it like a term of him speaking or a term of like donating or something like that. But basically it was like, the College of Fine Arts needs to be reinstated. If we want to talk about me, if we want to talk about me speaking at this commencement and, publicly being involved in all that, here's what needs to happen. And he was actually a part of even those, that movement when he was at Howard, decades ago at this point. So it's just so beautiful, and I'm so inspired by him. And I think everybody from alumni to current students to future students of fine arts are just really overjoyed with all the good news that has come out of that department. So yay!
Yay! That's amazing. That's amazing. So much joy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yay. Even though the way you said decades ago, it hurt my heart a little bit.
I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot, but I just pushed through it. I just pushed through it.
But it is truly
no. It's time. It's an objective, I suppose, thing.
It's a thing.
I mean, numbers just don't lie, and Chadwick was several years older than I am. I just want to put that out there. It's actually the same age as my husband, which is where old starts usually, where people who are my age, it's generally a youthful kind of a moment. I don't know if he's going to listen to this podcast,
okay.
But I wanted to hit him with that shade officially.
Well, Damien, I hope you're enjoying the podcast and that your marriage survived.
Cheers, everybody born in the 70s. Yay!
That's not my ministry.
Mine either.
Well, my joy this week, and like I said before, I cannot believe I tricked you both into letting me talk about it. So actually, this is often the saddest week of the year for me, because it means it's a whole nother year until there's a new Eurovision. Which is just my obsession, my secret, have you seen that sort of meme on TikTok that's like, POV, like you've been kidnapped, but the kidnappers return you after 2 hours because you won't stop talking about what? For me, it's Eurovision. And it's just, I mean, it is now, like, it's in its 65th year. It is officially the longest running, largest music contest in the entire world.
Wow. With
tens of millions of people from around the globe every year tuning into the semis and the grand final in Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. It is just a huge celebration of all different kinds of music. I think the first time that I saw it, it was the 2015 show, and I had just moved to Minnesota. I didn't know anyone except for my husband. He was like at work. I wasn't working yet. It was Memorial Day weekend. It was raining cats and dogs, so I couldn't go anywhere, even if I knew where to go. And for whatever reason, for the I think it was the 60th contest, they were live streaming it on YouTube. And so I had all these people on my Twitter feed going like, oh my God, Serbia, oh, Sweden, oh, Russia. That song was crazy with like all these like pictures of like these people in like glitter costumes and strange masks and hats and things. And I was like, what is going on in Europe? And so I went to YouTube, and it was just the voting portion of the show where all the countries come in and they announce who they voted for. And it was like all these like people in like crazy like dresses and like just saying like insane crazy things, and like it was just like so fun. And then at the end, that was the year that Sweden won, Måns Zelmerlöw, and he's cute, and I was like, oh. And then he sang his little song, and it was kind of a bop, and I was like, okay, I like this. And so I went back the next day and I watched the whole thing, and I was just instantly obsessed. And I think the thing for me that is so every year that's so exciting about it is that like, yes, it's this celebration of music, all sorts of genres, from pop to R&B to rap to rock to opera. There have been several opera acts that have qualified for the grand final over the course of the last few years. And also, like, the geopolitics of it all, I find really spicy and interesting. And, of course, just the glitter and the grandeur and the splendor. But also just what sort of really got me, and sometimes just kind of gets me a little choked up, is just the inclusivity of it all. Because you think something called Eurovision, like, oh, that's going to be some white nonsense. And it's like, no, it's just nonsense.
It is what I thought the first time you brought it up. I learned about Eurovision through you, and I was like, Eurovision?
And I understand why. I had the same reaction. But, like, I mean, it's so just openly queer. Just so queer. And, you know, people are just there just dancing and having an amazing time. And artists who are Black, white, Asian, just from all over the globe, representing just a diversity of just experiences and backgrounds in music, and it's so cool. And so I bring it up this year because one of the things that I felt was so cool this year is that like 5 Black acts qualified for the final this year, which is so cool. You had Destiny from Malta with her song Je me casse, which if you like Lizzo, if you like Beyonce.
I watched that one. It's a bop.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
It really is. It was so good. Jean-Guy Macroy for the Netherlands with Birth of a New Age. He is Dutch, but is of Guyanese descent, and he incorporated some lyrics in Guyanese Creole into his song, which is all about like colonization and resisting and holding on to your traditions. Your, you know, part of the lyrics are they, you know, imprisoned your thoughts. They stomped on your gods, but they're not going to break you. And it's just this amazing, beautifully, thoroughly Black song. Just gorgeous. And then, you know, others, there's Tusse from Sweden, and gosh, who am I forgetting? Sanit from San Marino, and she had a verse from Flowrida, and he actually showed up in Rotterdam this year to do his verse live.
Oh, wow.
I know, they backed a Brinks truck, I guess, up to his house, and informed him that San Marino is a thing, and they would like you to come do a verse on their song, please. And I mean, it just. And Eden Aline from Israel. She is of. I think her parents are Ethiopian.
Oh, cool.
And so she also qualified for the final. And so it was just like a super black final. And unfortunately, spoiler alert, none of them won this year, which is a big bummer. We all thought Destiny was.
She was extraordinary.
She has been signed to a major label record deal.
Oh, so she did win in a way.
Yeah, of course. And they and Malta was hoping that like she would come back and represent them again, but she might just be a little too big for the show this year. But it was just so lovely and heartening to see all of these black folks representing up on that stage. Holding it down for us, for the culture, at Eurovision of all places. And so, so that was what brings me joy the second week of every May. So if you want to check it out, the semifinals and the finals are on Peacock, actually, for free, because there is going to be an American Song Contest.
Is there really?
Yeah, premiering this winter, apparently. And it's going to be all 50 states and D.C. and all of the territories. So Puerto Rico and Guam and the
American Samoa. Right. Should we, the three of us, throw something together and submit? Is that a thing we should be working on right now?
Yes, but what we should do is we should put something together and submit it to San Marino so we can be like Florida. Yeah, I'm trying to get a free trip to Europe.
That sounds good to me. I want to go.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, let's aim.
You don't have to be from the country to represent it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, Celine Dion won for Switzerland in like the early 90s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's not Swiss.
And she also doesn't need to win like anybody's singing competition because she's already a legend.
I think it was like in like 1989 or something.
Okay, that makes me feel, I mean, like not like Celine Dion like 3 years ago being like, let me just wear these kids out real quick.
But that's another thing that's like, it's so weird to, it's like this sort of like kind of like quote unquote gentleman's agreement, I guess, again, like between the countries that like they don't send acts that have like a big sort of international following.
Right.
Because I'm just like, United Kingdom, why don't you just send Adele and just like have her stomp all over everyone?
Right.
Oh, I see. I didn't realize they could just technically send anybody. So they could send Adele.
I mean, we should just tell Beyonce that this is a thing and then just wrap this up for the next decade for the U.S. Wait, we don't get to participate in America, do we?
We don't. They don't want us.
Well, you know.
But they invited Australia.
Which is very much not Europe. So that's interesting.
Very much not Europe, but apparently the Eurovision is huge in Australia. And so they invited them for the 2015 show because it was the 60th anniversary, and they would be like, oh, this would be cute and fun for our 60th anniversary. And Australia was just like, wait, I'm sorry, we get to what? And then they came in and they just, another person of color, I'm not exactly sure what his background is, but Guy Sebastian came over, murdered the stage and ended up in 5th place. And then the next year they were like, all right, well, that was fun, why don't we invite them again? And they almost came through and won the whole thing, and they should have, because their song was the best one.
They said we've been waiting for this moment.
They were waiting in the wings.
I still say we put together a delegation, Beyonce, Jennifer Hudson, Patti LaBelle, and just end it. And let's just say, this is what y'all meant to do. Here's what it is. thank you very much, Eurovision. We took the crown. Come back and get it if you think you can. That's my contribution.
You need us. These are the ideas that you need.
I would even take sending a Lady Gaga, honestly, because that girl can write a song.
Yes, she can.
She can write a song and perform
and play that piano. Come on now.
So that's why we the competition would just be a little
and
too
do
much
it in a filet mignon outfit. I mean, the whole nothing is more American than going and barking a song and doing it in a meat dress like that. That is what we do really, really well. You know, the first time I saw Eurovision was 1997. I was in an exchange program that sent American kids over to Germany, and my host brother, shout to Gregor and the whole Stalter family, exposed me to Eurovision, and it was, I didn't get it at the time. I'm not even going to pretend. It was another time and another place, and my aesthetic was very much geared towards, you know, a certain Notorious B.I.G. So like Eurovision just like bounced off my brain, and I couldn't absorb it.
Also, like in the 90s, it wasn't up until about like maybe 2011. I feel like the contest took a sharp right turn where like countries went, oh wait, you mean like our songs could act? No, it was 2013 in Azerbaijan when like the song that won was like actually good, and like people went, wait, you mean our Eurovision entries could be actually like, good?
You know,
so yeah,
I wish that I had been there at that point to have seen it, because my loose memories of it was like, it just seems super weird. But I will say this, I saw it on RuPaul's Drag Race UK. They had a little competition episode.
UK hun.
It,
Ding dang bong. Ding dang dong.
I guess I forgot who I was talking to for like 2 seconds.
Right.
Like, but it was so good. And I was like, Damien, we need to watch this year. And then of course we didn't. So now we have the joy of going back and piecing this together via YouTube. But I did see a couple of the performances, and I'm obsessed with Destiny. Like I might need to put my ducats in a row so I can go to Europe and actually see her live, because I thoroughly enjoyed what she did.
And I'll tell you, it wasn't a great performance in the semifinals, but if you go to Peacock and set up a free account, you can watch both of the semifinals and the final for free. Her final performance, she knocked it out of the park.
I would love to see her and Lizzo do something together. Isn't Lizzo from this part of the country? Did I make that up?
You are correct.
Well, she's from Michigan, right? But she claims
I think
Minnesota.
It may be one of those things where like she claims a few different cities, like has spent, you know, formative years in a few different places. So I think it's like here and Michigan, but also, is it Texas? Am I getting that right?
I don't remember.
Well, she's just.
But yeah, no, they would kill it.
She's
together.
a woman of the world, but they would do so well together, and I would, you know, pay good money for that. Maybe one of our miniatures this year will submit some beautiful mini opera written for Lizzo and Destiny, and we will all get our lives off of that.
Ooh, and flute.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. I looked it up just because I love facts. Lizzo was born in Detroit, and then she moved to Houston, Texas, but then she started her career here in Minneapolis.
So she's basically like following you wherever you go.
Apparently.
I mean, I haven't been to Houston. I would love to. So, but yay, another Detroit girl. Yes. I endorse that collaboration even more now.
And you only think you want to go to Houston. It is the most humid place you've ever been in your life. It is, yeah. But the food is quite on point if you're in a barbecue.
Well, and, you know, if there is some sort of, like, Beyonce history tour, maybe that I could take.
Oh, let's be clear. It would be mostly for food, Beyonce, and black cowboys.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds legit.
A perfect name for your future autobiography.
Well, just to wrap this up really quick, I will say, if you want to get into Eurovision, you can watch, like I said, this year's contest on Peacock, but there are some of the grand finals from the past few years which are not geo-blocked on YouTube, and you can watch them in full. I would suggest starting with 2014 and moving to 2015. But they're all fun in their own way. You know, when the country that wins the contest hosts it the next year, so like that might, if you don't like spoilers, you know, maybe that's just something to keep in mind. But it's a good time. It's a good way to spend a rainy afternoon like this one if you've got 3 hours to kill and you want to watch some nonsense.
Thank you. Well, actually, nonsense is one of my favorite things to watch lately.
There you
So
go.
I may take you up on it.
Then this is perfect.
I'd rather
Let's
watch
go.
nonsense than live it, so maybe I can.
Okay.
And if
Some
you ever need a guide to guide you through it, I am happy. I know all of the rules. I know why. You know, Armenia and Azerbaijan are participating even though they're not in Europe. I'm happy to answer these questions for you.
You heard it here first, y'all. Rocky
Yes.
Jones, the official Black Eurovision liaison.
Oh my god. Yes. I'm gonna print up business cards.
I look forward to Rocky. They're just being like someday an official like Black review of Eurovision from Rocky. I can see it.
That is such a good idea. But I actually also was not kidding about like me representing San Marino. I've said this a number of times. And I'm just gonna take this opportunity to manifest that once again.
So that means we finally get to hear you sing?
Maybe.
Then I'm here for it.
You and 200 million other people. Well, I think we will leave it there. Thank you once again for letting me expound about Eurovision for half an hour. And thank you to our incredible guests, Professor Martin and Professor Hailstork, for being with us.
Yay.
And all the usual stuff. Follow us, review, rate us, share with your friends. Anyone who you feel needs some pure Black joy in their ears. But anything else that either one of you want to say before we head out?
Hey,
I tried to think of
everybody.
something wise, but I don't got it.
Well, I'll just say stay safe, everybody, and we love you, and we will see you in 2 weeks
2 weeks.
for our special Juneteenth episode.
Yay!
Yay! So we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.